how did he manage to ingratiate himself with all these individuals? Where did the money come from? This guy's worth hundreds of millions of dollars, Shawn.
Yeah.
How is it that we are sitting here now after he, I don't know what you're gonna say, he committed suicide in the prison where no one had ever been able to commit suicide before, after Ghislaine Maxwell has also gone off to prison and we learned nothing from her trial, Shawn, nothing.
The Epstein stuff that just dropped.
Sure.
Director of CIA, going to his townhome to have meetings. What would they be meeting about?
The Epstein story across the board is one where the conspiracy theorists, so to speak, keep on looking like the ones that see what's really going on, meaning that it just gets, you have to believe more and more coincidences. You have to believe more and more of the official line, even though that doesn't really seem credible. My biggest question, so the answer about the CIA guy is, yeah, so many, I mean, Bill Clinton, and he wasn't CIA director. I think he was a deputy assistant secretary at state or something at the time, but now is the CIA director, which is why it's getting so much attention. How did this guy, I can't even keep a list in my head of all of the private movie screenings with Woody Allen, had just had interactions with all these people as a matter of public record. We know this. How did he manage to ingratiate himself with all these individuals? And how is it that nobody stopped to think? We don't know. First of all, some of them were hanging out with him after he was already a sex criminal.
Yeah.
And that's by the way, you have to remember, these are people for whom protecting their reputations generally is one of their most important considerations, right? You're a politician, you're a public figure, you're going to hang out with a known sexual predator? You're going to have no interest in finding, you're just going to hang out with some guy who's in some $80 million mansion in Manhattan and owns a private island off the, U.S. Virgin Islands and owns a mansion in Palm Beach. You're going to hang out with him. Why? What is he going to do for you? How did he get, Bill Gates spent a lot of time with him. And you look at the figures. If you believe that there was like an Illuminati, that there was a globalist elite that has similar aims and a similar view of humanity and is looking for total control, those people, a lot of them, were in the Epstein orbit. I've never heard a good explanation for how that all came together. And there are some questions that I have about the Epstein thing that I'll put out there that I think are so, and I've heard from, again, these are people without attribution. I've heard people who have made very specific allegations, and these are very connected, very powerful people, like names that every single person watching this or listening to this would know, have made very specific allegations about Epstein, but they lack the proof. And they're not going to put themselves in a position, not about Epstein, but about the other.
Mm-hmm. The people involved.
So how is it that we all understand that Epstein's operating we still don't know where his money really came from. They say it was consulting or something, but that's not credible, right? We know that he was effectively given a house, I think, by, the founder of, I can't remember the guy's name, but by a billionaire. But we still don't know where the money came from, which is not that hard. You know what I mean? Forensic accounting. FBI is great at that. Where did the money come from? This guy's worth hundreds of millions of dollars, Shawn.
Yeah.
You know what the first thing when this came out? People said, oh, he was a stock market trader. I know hedge fund guys. I said, anyone ever heard of this guy? No. You're not making $600 million, $800 million on Wall Street. No one's ever heard of you before. This is crazy, right? Didn't make his money that way. So they don't really know where his money came from, which is a huge red flag in and of itself. And then there's what was he doing? He's running, we believe, right, a surveillance and blackmail operation. which likely involved, as from everything we can see, putting very powerful, very wealthy men in situations where they were engaged in sexual activity with underage girls, right? That, I believe, am I on point with this so far? Like,
Yeah,
is
you're
that
on.
right? Yeah. That is what the general belief is about what he was doing. How is it that we are sitting here now after he, I don't know what you're going to say, he committed suicide in the prison where no one had ever been able to commit suicide before, after Ghislaine Maxwell has also gone off to prison, and we learned nothing from her trial, Shawn. Nothing. She's just going away for 20 years. Just, we're not hearing a word about it. Oh, okay. Not a single person that I can think of, have we been told, is the actual target of this blackmail, with the exception of that British royal guy and, whatever, Prince Andrew, right? And even it seems that was Epstein, targeting him specifically, and how did that all work out? Point being, how do you have a massive at least multi-year, maybe multi-decade blackmail operation with no targets? No one ever has this answer for me. How do you have a blackmail operation where nobody was being blackmailed? One where you made hundreds of millions of dollars. And I think the answer is, there are people who have been able to adjust the system to their liking in a way that certain facts have not come to light. I'll give you a couple of other things, and other thoughts on this. Because also, it's difficult, because I think there probably are people who did lunch with Epstein and they didn't know, right? I think that's a thing. I think that's pretty clear at this point. But I also think there are people who did know.
Well, I mean,
And
you have all these billionaires that are going to take away the island. You have all these billionaires going to New York, staying in his townhome with them. When I travel somewhere, I don't stay at their house, especially if it's for business. I get a nice hotel, and I'm not a billionaire. I don't know any billionaires that stay at. Do you?
No,
that's very
he clearly had an MO here where he wanted people to be, he wanted to sort of bring them into the web. And it is surprising that you would, I shouldn't say surprising. There are people whom I think the public would be surprised, or have been surprised to find out, weren't more on guard about the whole thing, or weren't more aware. And when you start to think that through, you go, well, is it that they didn't know, or is it that they just pretended not to know? And that's where things start to get dialed in a little bit more. But I'll tell you a couple of data points that also go in so I think we can all agree, we don't really know where his money came from, and it's massive wealth, hundreds of millions of dollars. Okay. That's very strange. We should know where all this money came and went. It's all being done electronically. It should all be trackable. Oh, Swiss banking. There's no such thing as Swiss banking secrecy anymore. Give me a break. There'd be ways to figure this out. Someone doesn't want to know. Beyond that, where's the blacklist, the target list, the black book, whatever? Where is the target set that he was blackmailing? If we all think he was blackmailing, who is there? We haven't been told that. Then, if you go back to the earliest phase of the Epstein saga, he was given a plea deal that was so, I remember I asked my friend Andy McCarthy, who was a Southern District of New York prosecutor. You probably see him on Fox. Great guy, brilliant dude. I asked him about this specifically, this notion. And so he confirmed it for me. They gave Epstein a plea deal that excused his underage sex trafficking beyond a 6-month, basically home confinement. It was a joke. It was no sentence at all. And this was federal. But they also gave him that the plea deal covered him and unnamed possible co-conspirators. I asked Andy, I said, Andy, you were the Southern District of New York for 23 years. Have you ever even heard of that before? A plea deal that gives immunity beyond the individual to unnamed individuals? He says, no, he told me, that's not a thing. So you got a guy who is trafficking sexually underage girls. You got him nailed, dead to rights. And you give him the biggest sweetheart deal as a prosecutor anybody could ever imagine, the point where it's not even done in prosecutorial circles. Like, this isn't even attacked. Why would you ever do that? There's no basis for this in law. And remember, there was the prosecutor, the federal prosecutor in Florida at the time. This came up during the Trump administration. He had to go because people were really upset about this when they figured out how the Epstein thing was initially, because there was all this focus on the Epstein trial. They said, wait, what happened back in, the whatever it was, the early mid-2000s, when this first came up? So there's no explanation of that whatsoever, other than, and you've heard, I'm sure, the quote, we think he belongs to intelligence, and there's been this other stuff out there. And then I'll just add one more factoid to this. And I wish I had the, here's who he was working for, here's who he was targeting. I don't have it yet because I'm just, a guy, and I'm reading what I read in the news, and I'm trying to use the sources that I have. There are very powerful forces trying to stop us from knowing this. Shawn, when the FBI actually did I don't remember the year, but it was recent in the last few years. They did a raid on his home, and this was in the FBI in the logs. I mean, you can actually check this one. They did a raid on his home, and they came upon tapes. Okay, they came upon what we would assume would be surveillance footage. Now, we know he had the whole house mic'd up, camered up, the whole thing, right? Including the rooms that were specifically meant for, illicit activity. The FBI agent on the commanding, agent running the scene, reached out to Epstein's lawyers and let Epstein lawyers come and decide what was privileged and what was able to be taken. Let them sort it out.
Are you serious?
Yep.
It's funny to me that you have friends inside the FBI that get upset with you for talking shit about the FBI, and then we're talking about this right fucking now. That's why nobody fucking believes you.
FBI has gone into as an institution, gone into a very bad place for a number of reasons with the politicization. But on the Epstein thing, I mean, you think about the ferocity with which they went after Roger Stone for basically making a joke on Twitter DM. They go and they arrest this senior citizen in his silk pajamas with 26 guys in tack gear and make a real show of it. Mm-hmm. And then you see what the federal law enforcement apparatus did for years and years and years to Jeffrey Epstein. You wonder, what are the priorities here? They go after Roger Stone for nothing, like it's the Bin Laden raid, and they call CNN to watch it to humiliate him and put it on air. And we all know they did it. And the Epstein thing, no one has ever, by the way, all these things I brought up with you, I've never heard an explanation of this that didn't involve, I don't know, that's really bad. So what does that tell you? I hate when people just say this goes all the way to the top. The Epstein thing goes really high. I don't know where it stops, but this is not the way the system tells us that it works. And you're being asked to believe a lot when you're asked to believe the official narrative of what's really happened there.
He's just involved with so many people. I mean, the Virgin Islands are subpoenaing Larry Page of Google and JP Morgan for their ties with Epstein and human trafficking as of May 4, 2023. A federal judge ruled that JP Morgan and Deutsche Bank can be held physically liable for allowing Epstein to maintain his network of underage girls for sexual abuse, actively enabling him to continue his crimes. Do you think anything's going to happen with that?
This is where I go into I would love to believe that the system
We'll do the right thing.
Wants justice and will do the right. Yeah, but see, this is what you want to believe. This is party that wants to think the good guys, the cavalry, is going to arrive. Cavalry didn't arrive in time for all those young girls. Cavalry didn't show up to deal with that, piece of trash when it would have really counted and done something. And I think it's very hard for people to see all of these all these moments where there was at best this failure and not feel like there's something else that is at work with all of it. I think that there's no good explanations for how these things happen that don't involve. There is such a thing as a conspiracy, and some conspiracies are real. And with Epstein, I think we've seen the very kind of situation where incredibly powerful people will go to extreme lengths. I mean, there are few things that, no matter how powerful and rich you are, will destroy you, in the public eye and legally, as fast as, doing, illegal acts with underage girls. So what are the very powerful people who Epstein was targeting? We assume there were people who he was targeting. What are they not willing to do? Or what levers are they not willing to pull in order to make this sort of thing go away?
Nothing. I mean, they're having sex with underage women. I mean, that doesn't get any worse than that.
So that's when you see, and they remember the Epstein case. Really, I think it was the Miami Herald wrote about it again in 2019. It had sort of faded. People weren't really talking about it for a long time. And then finally there was this outrage about it, and there was a focus on it. But it's just really disconcerting at the deepest level to see that this is a guy that should have been put away for. Look, man, I don't like to do the thing where we compare this thing to that thing, or whataboutism. You had people on January 6th who didn't hit anyone, didn't break anything, didn't threaten anyone, and they were locked up like animals for 18 months in solitary confinement in a DC jail that was practically a gulag because they had the wrong politics and they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. Jeffrey Epstein was trafficking underage girls, and the system gave him a 6-month home confinement, go into a county jail for a couple of days a week thing, and just, made most of it go away. And then he kept doing it. That's the system.
Hey everybody, I'm Shawn Ryan. Click here to subscribe to the Shawn Ryan Show YouTube channel for the hottest and most compelling interviews that you will not see anywhere else. I've also made a playlist of all the previous SRS episodes so they're easy to find. You can find that right here.